Hello everyone, welcome to another lecture on front-end development. Today we are going to discuss how to make different forms in HTML. So if you have visited some websites, you would have always seen some kind of a form there that you can fill, submit and stuff like that, right? So as a simple example, let's say there is a profile filling form, right? Which asks you to, okay, give out your name, has a input box where you can type in. Then again, let's say give out your age, which is like a number thing. Then it asks you, okay, what is your gender, and gives you certain boxes. Okay, that male, female, other, and stuff like that, right? So basically, you can fill this form and simply click a submit button to create some action. Now that action could be that, okay, that your data is being sent somewhere. It might be to an email, it might be like whatever could be the thing that is happening on clicking this submit. But essentially, there would be an action associated with submission of this form. Okay, so how to create something like a form in HTML? We will not discuss more about this action because whatever happens in this action is part of the dynamicity, and we're going to discuss that in JavaScript. That what is this action? Maybe it's sending that data, collecting that data, and sending it somewhere, or some stuff like that. But we'll not focus more on this. What we are going to focus on is how to create a structure of this form object in HTML. Okay, so as you would have probably figured out by now, to create an HTML object, generally there is a tag, and here the tag obviously is a form with action equal to, you can define what do you want to do when someone submits this form, and it closes the form. So a simple form tag, which is, as the name suggests, a container tag because it will contain something, some objects. And then we will create something like this, some form like this. For that, the main different tag that we use here are two of them: label and input. So label is generally any text portion of our form. So all this comes under label. So if I want to basically make this form, I'll probably start with a label having name inside it. Second portion of the form, which is input, is generally what you want to take, where you want the user to do something, right? So input again can be of different types. It could be a normal text box, it could be a check box, it could be a radio button. We'll discuss about the different types of inputs also when we try to code the stuff out, right? But essentially we'll have some portion of input. Now generally an input is a non-container tag. Why? Because it's like, it's a simple place where the user can put something. So it could be a place where the user can, let's say, upload an image, or let's say he can fill some details, or let's say he can tick or something like that. But it would be a final input tag. Remember, this male, female are all labels. They are not associated with this input. Input is something where we just take some action from the user, and it's a non-container tag. Okay. So with this in mind, so if you want to just take text, we'll say input with type equal to text, and we can continue. So yeah, as I was saying, with this in mind, let's try to code a simple form like this up and see what we get there. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll simply create a new file here which says forms.html, and I'll again have my straight away HTML part here. Okay, so we have the body. Now what we wanted is a form. Right now I don't want to define any action, so I am omitting it. but generally it's very important to have the action tag here, because without that, form does not serve any purpose. It's just that the user will fill it, but there will be no action on top of that form, right? But right now, because we have not learned JavaScript and we don't know how to handle dynamicity, we'll not be putting any action here. Okay, so we wanted a simple label with name. Then we wanted a simple input with type equal to text. Sorry, type equal to text. Then we wanted a label called, what was the second label that we created? We wanted a label called, let's say, age. And then we wanted another input type. Okay, now here, what is the type that we want? We want to have the ability to only put a number here, right? So there exists another type, which is number. If you're using Visual Studio, it will tell you what are the different types that exist. So I'll go ahead and choose number here as the input type. Then we wanted a label for gender. And we wanted 3 different genders with input types as checkbox. Because generally gender is just one, I would use radio button instead. So I will say input type equal to radio. Then I'll have label as male. Then I'll just copy paste this to 3 more types, which is female and other. Okay, so we have our forms.html. Let's just copy its path and try to see what it showcases on the website. Okay, so we have our simple form. The user can simply type here that, okay, my name is Bharat Khanna. Here, if you see, if you basically try to type any characters, nothing will happen. Oh, somehow it got the E in it. Not sure how. But generally it just takes input as just numbers. So I can say, let's say I am 25, and then I can select my gender and I can fill this form, right? So as simple as that. Now with radio buttons, the speciality is that you can only select one of them. But here you can see I can select all of them. That is because I have not really linked them together as to saying that they are one group of radio buttons, right? So how do we do that? Let's see that next. Okay, so generally to any set of inputs, you also associate a name with it, and that uniquely identifies that particular type of input. So as an example, what I'll simply do here is I'll say name equal to gender, because all of them are essentially meaning gender only. Here also I will say name equal to gender. And here also I will say name equal to gender. Now based on this name, they are associated together. So name is a special tag that associates one particular set of inputs together. Okay. One more interesting attribute of input tag is value. So what is value? So when you submit this particular form, then in that submission, when you try to extract that, okay, for gender, what did the person select? Like based on name, gender, you want to know what is the value that the person selected, because these are just labels. They could be anything. I can even write XYZ here. But what will be important is this value of this particular input. So essentially what I mean is when we extract information from this form and try to see for gender name, what did the person select? Then the value associated with it is what we will get. So I will say, okay, value here is male. Value here is female. And value here is other. So what I mean here is because this is nowhere associated with this input, right? They are just two separate things. I can even remove this and my HTML page will still show 3 radio buttons, which are associated together with gender. But what did I actually select when I submit? That will be the corresponding value that for which the radio button I clicked on. Okay. So right now I'll not be able to showcase this, but when we actually go to JavaScript, we'll see an example like this and try to see how to extract different values from a form. Okay. By the way, one more interesting thing that I did here. This is a comment. So if you have done some programming language, what is a comment? Comment is a part of code which is just read only. It is not like it is like a message that you can write to reader of the code. So it does not have any impact on your page. So when you start in HTML, when you start something, actually this would be readable. When you start something with this, that is a less than exclamation dash dash and end here, everything enclosed within this is a comment. As you can see, it is green. That is, it is not part of the code. We can simply eliminate this also, and the HTML page will exactly look the same. So if you want to understand this more, just Google search what are comments in code. Comments is basically something which is not part of the actual code, but it is just a message that we want to put. Okay, so I will uncomment it quickly. Yeah, and we'll see how it works now. So now if you'll see, if I select this and then I try to select this, it gets switched, like male got removed and female got selected, for the simple reason that they are now together associated as one group of buttons because their name is same. Okay, so name is like a key of our input box and value is the corresponding thing it will communicate. So if I type something here, then the value of that particular box becomes this essentially. So if I had a name for this input box, my form data will say that, okay, for that name, you have this particular Bharat as the value. Okay. Now what we have done, we have discussed 3 different input types, which is text, number, radio. I'll quickly walk you over the remaining types. You can also try to pause the video and see what are the other types of thing that you see generally in a form, right? Okay, great if you were able to come up with some of them. I'll list down some of them. So one other thing which is common is if you want to input a email ID or a password. So for that, again, we have specific input types. So input type equal to email. This is will be for email input. I'll say password. Okay, so let's try this out. So if I write something wrong, what happens? Nothing right now. But so right now it does not do any check. But actually, when you try to submit the form, then if this email is invalid, it would try to give you some error, right? We'll see how. Just let's put a submit button after this and then try to submit it without @gmail.com and let's see what happens. In password, there is a special characteristic that it just shows dots. So if you would have seen that, yeah, so if you would have just seen that these kind of things exist on almost all the websites, right? That as soon as you start typing something, it just shows dot 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 dot, because password is not something that you can display it right there and then to the everyone out there. Okay, so that is your password field. Similarly, we'll have some other fields that I'll quickly go over. So we also have an input type of date, which will act like where we can pick a date. Similarly, we have 2 more versions of date, which are date time and date time local. Okay, so essentially, as the name suggests, this is date, this is date time. This will take your date time in the local format. So that is the only difference between the three. Let's quickly see how they look. Okay, so you can just type in, let's say, right? So some random date. Here also you can type in the date, time, and things. Here it's a text box. Right? But again, just like email, it would also have some kind of checks when it goes to the background. Okay. Apart from dates, there are a few more different input types that you can read about. Some things that I will quickly mention, which are actually important. One other type, just like radio button, is a checkbox. So what is the difference between a checkbox and a radio button? Radio button, you can select only one. Checkbox is generally associated with more than one selection. So as an example, if I just change this to a checkbox, let's see what happens. Now, I can actually select more than one. Right? And its design slightly changes. But essentially, it's like when you want to give more than one select option. Okay. So we have covered checkbox. Let's go and quickly check about files, how to have that browse of uploading a particular file, right? For that, again, there are a few other types of input. So input type equal to file. And we'll also quickly explore with this. What if we just want to put a URL? So input type equal to URL. Okay. So choose a file is simple. It allows you to pick a random file from your desktop. Like when you click this, you'll be able to open your desktop things and you can upload something here. And last is URL. So as I suggested, again, it's a simple text, but at the end of it, it will still look for that it is a URL. It is not anything that you have pasted there. Okay. So those are the different types of input. Some of them might work in some browsers. Some of them are not supported in other browsers also, right? Okay. So we have covered this. Last thing is a submit button. So I'll say type equal to submit. So this button essentially triggers your action that you provide in your form. So when you click this submit button, whatever action that you have given in top, that gets triggered. So let's say if I have a random thing here, yes, it gives out this error message that you should include @ in the email address, right? So just like I said, even though it's a simple text box, it will not allow you to put anything and everything here. Similarly, here also, if I put some random stuff, it will give please enter a relevant URL. So same idea, like, but essentially what we are trying to do, we are trying to create different elements of a form. Great. So that sums up everything regarding forms. Yeah, so we'll meet in the next video now, where we are going to discuss a little bit about divs. And now will start coming the interesting part where you can actually build something very similar to your looking websites, right? So let's move on to divs and then to CSS to be able to create actual websites.